Hey guys, welcome back to the Reading Stack. I'm Hunter, and today we're resuming our series of Shooting the Breeze, just providing a conversation point, I suppose, of maybe some important matter or wisdom I could share. Hopefully I have something to share with you that I hope just blesses you or gives you something to think about. Well, henceforth, furthermore, I want to share with you today this concept of reading and I guess self-development. As reading does for us, it develops our self and our soul. And if there's one tip for reading that I could give people that I know has worked for me and helped me, it would be for a person to venture into reading deeply and widely, reading deep and wide. Now, I encountered this concept first in a church series. It was actually a list of, it was like lessons, this outline of how to fulfill different spiritual disciplines. And this specific spiritual discipline that this church was talking about was reading Scripture, that is a command in Scripture, a practice to give attention to the Word and to renew our minds in our reading. But practically, the church was talking about reading Scripture in a manner where somebody could, there's 66 books of the Bible. I want to say it's a book with 31,000 verses and it's 66 books. And so it's a big book. It's easy to get lost in it, to really zoom into one part and to miss the expense of the whole or the wide narrative, the arch narrative of Scripture and what it's communicating for what it would be communicating specifically and directly, maybe in the Gospel of John or Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers. It's easy to get zoomed in and miss the whole entirety of it, or to want to skim through and then you miss the richness and the depth found in it. And a great example of this would be like Jesus' statement to the crowd, to the Herodians and the Sadducees, if I remember correctly, where he says, give back to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and give back to God the things that are God's. And that's a statement in itself that, as I've studied it and looked at it, you could write thousands of books just analyzing that one concept and all of its implications, that one statement. That is a very deep thing in a sentence. It is unimaginably dense in just a few short words. Moreover, Jesus also models this principle in the end of Luke, in I have it wrote down here somewhere. Near the end of Luke, there's a point where he has been resurrected already, and he meets these disciples that are looking downcast. They're leaving Jerusalem, and he comes up to them, and in a disguised appearance, they have a conversation, and Jesus explains, well, wasn't it necessary the Messiah had to suffer and die and be resurrected? And they're like, what? No, huh? They're in total confusion about it. And Jesus, disguised, goes and explains to them from the beginning of Scripture, the books of Moses, through the prophets, the Old Testament that was there and existent up to that point, about what it prophesied and foreshadowed Jesus doing, dying on the cross and raising again, being the sacrifice, and all those things in the, I believe it's 39 Old Testament books. He takes the narrative through that to where they are today. And likewise, there's a principle there in that we're supposed to know the whole, not lose sight of the whole for when we go in to a book or to a passage, that we kind of understand the bigger picture. So in there, it was encouraging people to read deep and wide, to really study but also to study and survey the scriptures. Well, getting outside of that lens, the spiritual discipline of reading scripture, I just want to talk about reading in general now. How do we read with depth and width? Well, I want to cover depth to explain it properly and briefly. Depth is what it would be relating. We're reading in things that we have some expertise in, some knowledge of, and we're getting those things. We're gaining expertise and knowledge with a particular thing. We're very familiar with it, but we're leveling up in our knowledge of it, our depth. It's like you surgically going in and you're mining for the gold nuggets in a realm you already know of to level up in that area. It is in a realm you feel comfortable with, but you want to explore it further. It's like us operating in our comfort zone, but wanting to become better in that. Components of reading in depth that are, we would say, the pros, the good things about it. But there's also negative implications, and what I mean is, if you were to ignore the depth, if you were just going in deep to one thing, to know one thing very extremely well, reading science fiction, getting super deep through that, or reading, what would you say, alternative history, or you're reading romance, or you're reading theology super deep. The bad side, the downside to that, if you're not reading with any width, if you're not venturing out there, is you're likely sequestering yourself, that you're allowing a deficit in your maybe situational awareness of other things. There's a great illustration in found in the show SpongeBob SquarePants, where in an episode they, if I remember correctly, they wanted to turn the Krusty Krab restaurant into a fine dining experience. So SpongeBob SquarePants, he becomes a fine dining waiter, and he is encouraged to know nothing other than fine dining and breathing. So he does the greatest job in the world at being a waiter, at serving the customer and breathing. But one of the people being served asked him, "Sir, this is excellent. Can I know your name?" And SpongeBob looks like, my name? And inside of his brain is this sequence of chaos, of nuclear meltdown, because he has completely erased his name. He has no width to even know his simple name to relay that. But he knows fine dining and breathing really well. And anyways, hilarity ensues after that point. But the illustration is, the point is that he was so deep into fine dining and breathing that he was completely blindsided by something simple, something other. And so depth at the exclusion of width can be a great weakness. It can be very, very bad. Now, width, let's talk about that. Reading widely. Reading widely, the good it does is it gives us perspective to other viewpoints, other subjects, other things that we're not in our bubble interacting with all the time. It's truly where, as in depth giving us knowledge of a thing, wisdom gives us an understanding of the connection points between things. That everything is very interconnected. That the way economics, politics, theology, the way everything is very interconnected. And when someone reads widely and looks out there, they see it. They see things that are in sync with one another. They give us wisdom, perspective, and as I've learned before from different research people have done, reading affects our interpersonal relationships in a positive way. Based on what we read, it works in our brain to help us build empathy. When we see something a fictional character goes through, but they're portrayed realistically, which generally they have to be to make it engaging, we become more empathetic for somebody in real life that is dealing with something, a tragedy or a circumstance. And it goes back in our communication, where we become wiser. We know how to. I remember reading a book about a guy. It was way outside of my realm, but this guy, he gets this disability where some rare disease happens and he loses the ability to use his arms. Like, he still has his arms, but he can't use them anymore. He can't pick up his very young children. He has struggles with feeling about his masculinity because he can't exhibit really any kind of strength like you would normally and physically. And that connection point of just disability and being blindsided was great for me, as the book really shows you how to care for people that are, when tragedy happens, physical illness, disability. He gives a lot of good pointers there, and there's a lot of examples of the ways people did something that was very insensitive to him, very hurtful, but maybe well-intentioned. So reading that gave me a little bit more wisdom in how to deal with somebody that is hurting, that may have a physical wound, but a much larger wound in their soul. And so reading with width like that, it was way outside of my zone, but it was helpful for me. When we read with width and breadth, if that's the proper term, if we read outside of our zone, we are effectively adding counselors to our life that are making us more well-rounded, better decision makers. Just as the president has a cabinet, a board that are experts in transportation, in education, in the military, in economics, in immigration, in a whole litany of areas. We now have a cabinet by reading outside of voices that are contributing to our well-roundedness in how we're going to live and in the decisions we're going to make. We become wiser is essentially what I'm saying. So width helps with that. However, if you don't go for any depth, any kind of specialization or expertise, you're, as the quotes say, you're a mile wide and an inch deep. You're shallow, you're a lightweight. You know just enough to get in trouble, as some people have said that people that study philosophy, people are better philosophers, they say, if they've never taken a philosophy class, or if they've taken a whole bunch of philosophy experience, because the person that knows just a little bit is very dangerous and very ignorant, I guess you could say. I only have to be real about my ignorance, but when we know just a little bit, but we don't know anything very deeply, we can be in trouble. We can become very illogical or hasty, and we're not as well seasoned and solidified in whatever we're interacting with. And who wants to be weak? Who wants to say, yeah, I'm content with staying weak and maybe helpless in this area? I mean, who doesn't want to become stronger and better? I'd like to go back and talk for one practical example of depth. There's a simple example of someone that's so deep but they're not wide, and a good example is in the gym of people that are just total beast when it comes to their arm muscles, their shoulders, their their upper body. Their upper body is swole, you might would say, but they have skipped leg day. They haven't gone for any kind of full body workout or at least condition their whole self. So they're very swole, but they're very weak in other areas because they've gone so deep and specialized in the upper body. and it's kind of a meme or a joke about, don't skip leg day, because a lot of people do. It's easy to stay in the realm of our strength and our current awareness and not get out of it, and ultimately become more stronger, healthy overall. The diversification of labor, it encourages us and moves us to become specialists, because specializing can move us towards where the big bucks are, becoming an expert in our field and our craft. There's also the ideal that we enjoy of the Renaissance man, the man that is well versed in everything. He's a jack of all trades, but if you lack that depth as well, they say you're a master of none. And so ultimately it's a balancing act, a fine balancing act, to grow ourselves into both experts and as well as people that are very well-rounded, well-informed across the board, and healthier overall. So it's a huge challenge, and it's definitely a dynamic I struggle with, in all honesty. But that's why I enjoy pursuing it, because I know truly that's where strength lies, where in width you get different perspectives, different counselors, you're growing in wisdom, but through depth you're coming to become stronger truly in some things. You're mining, you're getting what you want out of it, you're intentionally seeking to get out of one thing what you want. Well, so how do we become deeper and wider in our reading and in our field of knowledge, in our everything, becoming deeper, wider, more fuller people? Well, so here's a practical tip and application I would give you, is maybe you could look to become wider in your knowledge, to expand, is maybe you could look for one book that is something entirely out of your purview, out of your situation, and maybe get it and make it a light and introductory look at that thing. A book I want to show you right here I have is a book on web design. It is HTML and CSS by John Duckett. Now, I had no experience with HTML or most of this stuff, coding that, and was totally unaware, but this book was extremely simple. Literally, in the pictures within, he is showing you every operation he is doing. Its input and its output, what goes in, what comes out. That was great for me, because if you just said, put this here and that there, the stuff I would design and build would be so broken, because I was such a novice. So a book like this, and just whatever's out there outside of your sphere that you want to know more about, become more enhanced in, to encounter, know a little bit about, look for a light and introductory look at that thing. Something that is not necessarily a challenging book, but is a challenge to you because of the little you know about it. So that's one tip to get wider. But let's talk about depth. What could you do to become deeper in your reading? Well, I'd say maybe look for something that's in your ballpark, something a bit more challenging, something that would upgrade you, that is very practical and relevant to your interest, to the things you're doing right now, maybe to your job, to your situation, that will cause you to level up in the disciplines and the things you're already doing and pursuing. So I've been, it might be a poor example, but I've been reading a lot of political stuff, read a lot of the Constitution passionately, and really enjoyed that. Well, a book I wanted to read was the Anti-Federalist Papers that were a large part of the constitutional debate on the state's relationships to the federal government. Now, that's a total nerdy thing for me to tell you, but it kind of goes along with what I've been reading and looking at a lot. So it was just a slight upgrade. It is tougher than the Constitution and other things, but it's not like a crusher. It feels like a suitable for me to read right now. Maybe not earlier, and maybe in the future I'm way leveled up, but it felt like a decent jump. So maybe look for something in your life that you're interested in, you're passionately pursuing, you know a little bit about, and you maybe get something that's a little bit more challenging. And I want to just say and caveat all this, regardless of whatever I've said, in reading, make it fun, make it your own adventure, and make it worthwhile for yourself. And it just takes experimentation to getting what you want out of it. And all of this with me, I've been sharing with you, is a large experiment. It's been really fun and enjoyable. And I just hope you're blessed in whatever you decide to read, the audiobooks you put in, the ebooks, the physical books you read, that ultimately your library is a blessing for you. It's your library. Thank y'all so much for watching this Shooting the Breeze. I hope y'all have a blessed day, and keep reading. Peace.